So I'm going to start with a big plane and a thin plane. And I might have gone a little too big with this, but that's okay. We're going to give it a height or a depth to it. We're going to decide how big it's going to be. Now this is one where we probably are going to need to draw this as if it were see-through. So it's not going to be enough just to draw the top of it as if it were solid. Let's draw the bottom too. And you can see my human error there, that my X's did not line up on top of each other. I'm looking at it and thinking this. Oh no, this might have been the problem. Could I redraw that line and make it work? Probably not, but I can make it a little closer and fudge it. Okay. So I tried to look and just see, did my lines come together too soon? And then they did. So I was just trying to maybe fix that in favor of the shape working a little better. All right. So now we want to cut out, make this a grid. You can evenly space this. There's a way to do that. And there's a couple ways to do that. I think the best way to do it, if you do want some sense of evenness to it, is not to be too, to still let yourself eyeball this a little bit, but you could draw, an X. And we could divide this, once or twice. So I don't want to get too crazy with it, but which maybe some of you guys are going to be like, yes, we're there. This is already too much. So right now I've got this divided where I would have 4. If I divide it again, I'm going to have a lot more than 4. $16. Make sure when you're drawing these lines, you're always just dealing with the top plane. You're not getting mixed up with what's the top plane and what's the bottom plane. If that's you, you're thinking, oh yeah, I do that. Use 2 different colors to draw the lines so that you always know, I'm going to a red line or I'm going to a blue line. I'm going to do this further division, although I don't necessarily think it's, I don't know that I'll sit here and draw every single one of these. I want you to see how it would happen so you can make your own choices. If I go beyond what you might want to do, then you can decide where to stop. If I don't go that far, then you don't have there's not really a choice to be made there. All right, so this is the part that I think is maybe reasonable to do in terms of making these divisions. So this rectangle, see how it looks like a rectangle? Right about here, it looks like a square. And right here, it looks like a rectangle going in the opposite direction. These are actually proportional to each other. This is what this would look like as it moves back in space. So, you know, this is an even division. If you were eyeballing it and just making these divisions, you might divide them a little differently, which is okay too. You could also do this vertically, you know, draw a plane, not to get too off course here, but another way to do this that might involve a little less perspective would be to do a vertical plane and have it be only, you know, so deep on one side and do this form going back in space. And if somebody's sitting there saying, oh, well, I really wanted to see that, I'll do that too. But I'm only doing 4. I'm not doing 16. You see what I mean there? So you could do a grid in a space like this as well. Okay, so let's go back to what our original drawing was though. And I might zoom this camera in just to keep you where you can see the most possible. So what I think we should maybe take it upon ourselves to make up a little bit is maybe how wide these are going to be as they go back in space. So let's say I wanted to have the cutout be kind of right here. So I'm just going to kind of, you'll see where I'm just kind of making choices in just a second. But, you know, I can keep this proportional by going back to the other X marks and following the vanishing point. Oh, this gets really tiny back here. That's not fun. Real tiny. But again, I'm going to stop on that diagonal X. Just keeping my ruler on the other side lets me see a little more what I'm, you know, running into. I don't see the X there. Oh, there it is. And we'll connect those back here, you know, so something that looks big on the front is just a sliver by the time it gets to the back. And this is still proportional. Now we need to decide the width of these divisions, and that's where it gets somewhat difficult to keep everything absolutely proportional, you know, where I know exactly what this is going to look like this far down. So I'm going to just make some educated guesses and make sure that each time I do one of these, it's a little smaller than the last one. So, you know, if this width is, I'm going with centimeters here because it's easier to count, you know, just if this width is right here, I'm not even going to count. I'm just going to make sure that the next one is, you know, 1 millimeter smaller than that. The next one is a little smaller than that. And the next one is a little smaller than that. And since this is the bigger side, I decided to cut into this side. This one might not be exactly right, but what can you do? I'm not taking off for it. Kind of feeling like I should have made these a little wider as I'm drawing them, just for ease of, you know, doing what we talked about. And I'm ending each of these lines on that inside rectangle because that's where we agreed to cut out of. Okay, and then I need to do the same thing going this direction. And again, I can kind of use this as my initial guide. You know, make this one a little bit smaller. This one a little bit smaller. And this one smaller still. It feels so much wider than the other way. So I could tweak that if it just doesn't look right to me. I could change that. All right, so now I've actually got everything drawn for the top side. What I don't have is the bottom side. And this is where I think a lot of people kind of go cross-eyed. So I'm going to try to talk you through it and then do it. So, you know, what we would do is cut basically right here. This is the rectangle, right? This is the hole that we're cutting out, but we don't know how deep it goes. You know, we don't know what this width is back here. So the way we can know is that, remember when we talked about with the letters, that wrapping around? So we come all the way out, we go straight down, and you should use a right angle or a, you know, something to do that if you need to. And then go back, and where we intersect with this vertical, assuming you've already drawn that vertical, that's where that goes. Same thing over here. We've got to come out from the vanishing point, straight down, and then back to the vanishing point. And obviously this will be your guide as well. So that gives you that mark. Now this also gives us the marks all the way back, right? Because it's a grid. So this bottom line is going to be consistent, even though I don't know, well, you know, I can kind of visualize with a straight down mark where this ends on each shape. Right? And then we can do it with the other side going this way. And I know roughly where I'm starting it because it's this edge. I know roughly where I'm ending it because I can kind of visualize where this straight down is. Okay, and then back here, you know, in the very back, man, that's really tiny, right? Like we're coming forward, we're going down, and we're going back, and it's such a small little sliver, you know, where I run into this. It's all so, you know, close and thin back there. And I might even want to use it as many times as I just went over that. I probably want a thinner line for that. You know, if you really trust your mark here, if you really trust this intersection, then you could just go off of that point and say that's going to be my point for everything. Does that make sense what I did? You know, I just counted on that intersection being correct. We'll see how that turns out for me. May work out just fine. Keep going, you know, see those two intersections right here. Maybe I'll trust those rather than doing that whole wraparound point now that I've found a couple. Right. Oh, I didn't draw that first one. Now I've got these 2 points back here. One thing, you know, as I'm drawing that I think I would want to make darker is these lines that are on top. Like, you see how I'm drawing pretty dark as I'm doing these marks, but this mark, for example, is not that dark. I'd kind of like to make that line a little more robust as well to show where that overlap, you know, is happening. And then areas like this, I'll actually be erasing some of those marks. What also gets fun is when you start drawing shapes behind and on top of that. And you really go cross-eyed a little bit. Okay, so you see me, I'm not done with this, but you see me kind of erasing some of the lines I don't need, just to make the drawing a little clearer. So who's watching this and saying, oh yeah, I'm going to try that? And who's thinking, get me out of here? All right, was that my last line? I think it was. Oh, and then back here, the very back, which, you know, this line really means that this should be ending, if anything, a little lower. I'm not getting that. And I'm just going to try to, you know, so far I've ended them even a little higher. So I may want to revisit this a little bit, like maybe my lines were a little too far to the right. And I want to try to move them in. And this is the farthest away, so this is probably where I could have just fudged it a little bit, but, and especially when you erase some of these lines you shouldn't be seeing anyway, it's becomes not that big of a deal. And I think that you probably are better off kind of making up something that looks believable by this time, you know, back here, rather than stressing too much about getting it exactly right. But is that making sense? Riley, did your eyes glaze over, or that makes sense, kind of?
Yeah, it's making sense.
All right. So, and you know, it's all recorded if anybody wants to do it. Do you want me to draw the vertical version of it, or are you good with, do you want me to draw this version with like 4, or anybody want to see that or no? Okay.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Is it going to mess you up if I flip it upside down?
No, well.
Okay. It would just be easier for me to hold it. All right. So I'm just going to finish this form. I'm glad you guys can't see how messy my desk is over here, but I'm drawing on top of all kinds of stuff. All right, so again, just going to do an X to kind of find the halfway point, not going to divide it any further than just 4 spaces. Although you can, you absolutely can. Verticals really matter on this one, so I'm gonna make sure I line up my ruler with the bottom of the paper. And then again, gonna just make some decisions about how wide I want this to be. So just based on that one mark, I can really cut out the whole window just by going off those X points. You know, where I intersect with those diagonals, we'll keep it all proportional. Okay, and then for the inside line, like the division line, I know I went kind of to the left with the other one. I want to be maybe a little more even about how I do that division in this one, since I'm only doing 4. I can also kind of handle it. So I'm gonna just make points to the left and right of that X. Again, I think the biggest risk with doing this is just keeping straight all of your marks. And, you know, with concern for losing track of the marks, I'm just going to erase some of these that are not needed anymore. So I've got this drawn, and then I need to project this onto the back of the box, or another way to say it is, you know, cut these shapes out. So again, kind of figuring out where these things are happening on the back side of the box is important. So I'm gonna take this mark. Actually, it might maybe make more sense down here. I'm going to take this lowest mark where I'm going to be seeing, you know, ultimately I'm making up this angle, but I'm going to be seeing the inside of this, right? I'm going to be seeing that, but I don't know how deep this line really should be. So I'm going to go forward, then back to the other vanishing point, and then back again to this vanishing point. I'm gonna go all the way back. And then wherever, I know this has an angle here, but I made up that angle. So I'm just gonna make sure I've got it right. So right there is where the depth of that box is going to be. And I'm gonna draw this line. That's the intersection. Just keep going up. So now I've got the inside here. Now this, I drew it dark and confidently, but this is not, you know, this is not showing that top plane that I should be looking down on. I needed to draw a line from this corner back, and that mark, you know, helps me find this inside as well as this back side. Same as this line helped me find this line. I still need to go back to the vanishing point. And that's the alternative to the wrapping around. So where I run into this, and if I'm really confident in that, I could really just do this side too, and hopefully this works out with the vanishing point. Oh wow, yeah, it does. Okay. So if you're being precise enough, all those lines are going to come together. Once you have one of them, you know, as long as you're using those vanishing points really carefully and consistently, all of these marks are going to work out and sort of build off one another. You know, once you know how to find one, it's pretty easy to find the rest. And thank you for asking for those demos, because I don't think I have them recorded, and it'll be good to post them.